6 months after the rescue at Volani Space, the galaxy had changed forever. Admiral Minho Park stood in the command center of his new flagship, watching real-time tactical displays that showed human forces operating across 17 different star systems. The small monitoring station where he had first received the Volani distress signal now seemed like a memory from another lifetime. Status report from all sectors, Minho requested from his communications officer. The responses came in rapidly from commanders throughout what had become known as the Liberation Zone. Captain Hyun Choi reported successful raids against 3 hegemony supply bases. Commander Bora Shin announced the establishment of 2 new refugee colonies for species fleeing hegemony persecution. Intelligence teams led by Nara Bay confirmed the destruction of a major enemy communication hub. The Ghost fleet no longer existed as a single hidden armada. It had grown into the Terran Armada, a coalition of human ships and vessels from allied species that struck at hegemony targets across 1,000 light-years of space. Every victory brought new allies, and every new ally brought additional resources and knowledge. Admiral, his tactical officer announced, "We're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Admiral June. The hegemony is moving their largest fleet toward the Kepler sector. Intelligence estimates over 20,000 ships." Minho felt a familiar chill. The hegemony had finally assembled the massive force they needed to crush human resistance once and for all. 20,000 ships represented more military power than had been gathered in one place for centuries. "Where are they? Planning to attack?" Minho asked. "Unknown, sir. But they're following false intelligence we planted about Earth's location. They think our homeworld is in the Kepler sector, and they're preparing to destroy everything there." This was the culmination of months of careful deception. Human intelligence teams had been feeding the hegemony false information about Earth's location, drawing their massive fleet toward empty space while the real human homeworld remained hidden and defended. Dr. Ray Park's research teams had spent the past 6 months working with scientists from dozens of allied species. The results were revolutionary new technologies that combined human innovation with alien knowledge. Ships that had once seemed impossible were now patrolling the Liberation Zone, equipped with hybrid weapons that no single species could have developed alone. "Admiral," Ray reported over the communication link, "the new hybrid vessels are performing beyond all expectations. The Kethani energy shields combined with human stealth technology make our ships nearly invulnerable to conventional hegemony weapons. The Zephyrian navigation systems integrated with our quantum computers allow tactical coordination across interstellar distances." The Liberation Zone had become a testing ground for technologies that challenged every assumption about galactic warfare. Human tactics, proven effective in individual battles, were now being taught to species that had never imagined fighting could be anything other than suicidal resistance. Commander Bora Shin had become the primary coordinator between human forces and their growing alliance of liberated species. Her diplomatic skills were as important as her military expertise in holding together a coalition that spanned dozens of different cultures and technologies. "Admiral Park," Bora reported from the Alliance Coordination Center, "we now have confirmed military support from 43 different species. The Volani have completed construction of their first combat vessels using human-designed weapon systems. The Althari have shared their manufacturing technology, allowing us to produce ammunition and spare parts at rates that match our consumption." This was the transformation that Admiral June had gambled everything to achieve. The scattered younger species were no longer isolated victims waiting to be destroyed. They had become a unified coalition with the industrial capacity to fight, a sustained war against their ancient oppressors. The hegemony, facing their first serious challenge in millennia, was beginning to fracture internally. Member species that had supported the ancient order for thousands of years were questioning the wisdom of continuing a war against enemies, who seemed to grow stronger with each engagement. Intelligence reports from Nara Bay's expanded network confirmed that several older hegemony species were secretly negotiating with the Liberation Alliance. The unity that had held their empire together for 10,000 years was cracking under the pressure of a war they couldn't seem to win. "Admiral," Nara reported, We're receiving communication requests from 3 different hegemony member species. They want to discuss terms for switching sides. The Velthans are offering to provide intelligence about hegemony fleet movements in exchange for protection from retaliation. The Mordaki are willing to share advanced manufacturing techniques if we can guarantee their colony's safety. This was exactly what human strategists had hoped would happen. The hegemony's greatest strength had always been the fear they inspired in other species. But fear was a fragile foundation for an empire when facing opponents who had proven that the ancient rulers could be defeated. Captain Hyun Choi now commanded a fleet group rather than a single ship. The Retribution had become the flagship of a task force that included vessels from 6 different species, all coordinated through human, tactical systems and fighting with strategies that had evolved far beyond their original designs. Admiral Park, Hyun reported, Task Force Alpha has completed the assault on the Hegemony Industrial Complex at Vorthak Prime. The enemy's main weapon manufacturing facility has been destroyed, along with their primary shipyard in that sector. Estimated impact on their production capacity, 15% reduction system-wide. The human strategy had evolved from desperate survival to systematic dismantling of enemy capabilities. Instead of fighting massive fleet engagements where the hegemony's numerical advantages would be decisive, Liberation Alliance forces struck at industrial targets, communication networks, and supply lines. Each successful raid made it harder for the enemy to coordinate their vast empire and maintain the fleets needed to suppress dozens of rebellious species. The ancient order that had seemed permanent was being eroded one successful mission at a time. Supreme Commander Vorthak's replacement, a being called Overlord Kethrix, had been given unprecedented authority to crush the rebellion. But every strategy he deployed seemed to fail against enemies who fought unlike anything in hegemony experience. The humans have corrupted the natural order, Kethrix declared to his war council. They have convinced inferior species that resistance is possible. This cannot be allowed to continue. But the rebellion was no longer dependent on human leadership. Species that had been hiding for generations were now building their own fleets and developing their own tactics. The knowledge that the hegemony could be defeated had spread faster than any military force could contain. Lieutenant Gina Song, now promoted to commander, coordinated tactical operations from the new strategic command center established in the Yaryar, heart of the Liberation Zone. Her displays showed friendly forces operating across hundreds of star systems, each group adapted to local conditions, but connected through quantum communication networks that the enemy couldn't intercept or jam. All task forces, this is Strategic Command, Gina announced. The hegemony's massive fleet has reached the Kepler sector and is beginning their search for Earth. Phase 7 is now in effect. All units, begin simultaneous strikes against targets in your assigned sectors. Across the Liberation Zone, Allied fleets struck at hegemony positions with coordinated precision that would have been impossible just months earlier. Human tactical doctrine had been adapted and improved by dozens of different species, each adding their own innovations and advantages. The attacks were timed to occur simultaneously across such a vast area that the hegemony couldn't respond effectively to any of them. Their massive fleet, concentrated in one sector searching for Earth, was too far away to provide support for the industrial bases and communication hubs that were being systematically destroyed. Fleet Admiral June, monitoring the operations from his command ship, watched as the galaxy transformed before his eyes. The ancient empire that had ruled through fear and overwhelming force was being dismantled by opponents who refused to follow the established rules of galactic warfare. Admiral Park, June transmitted, the hegemony fleet in Kepler sector is beginning to realize they've been deceived. Long-range sensors show them breaking formation and attempting to respond to our attacks in other sectors. But they're too far away and moving too slowly to be effective. This was the moment that would determine the future of galactic civilization. The hegemony's largest fleet was out of position, chasing false intelligence while their empire burned around them. If the Liberation Alliance could maintain pressure on multiple fronts, the ancient order would collapse under its own weight. But Admiral Minho knew that the real victory was not military. It was psychological and political. For the first time, In galactic history, younger species had proven that they could unite, fight, and win against their ancient oppressors. That knowledge would spread to every corner of the galaxy, inspiring resistance that no force could completely suppress. Send a message to all Liberation Alliance forces, Minho ordered. Today we have proven that the galaxy belongs to. 3 weeks after the battle at Valani Space, Admiral Jun Kang stood in the command center of his flagship and studied reports that made his blood run cold. The victory that had felt so complete was beginning to show its true cost. Intelligence. Report from our deep space monitors, Captain Un Yu announced as she entered the command center. Her heavy cruiser Iron Will had been conducting reconnaissance missions throughout hegemony space, gathering information about enemy response to humanity's sudden appearance. What did you find? June asked, though he already suspected the answer would not be good news. Sir, the hegemony is mobilizing the largest fleet in galactic history. Over 15,000 ships from across their empire are converging on human space. They've declared us a galaxy-level threat and authorized the use of weapons that have been banned for centuries. June felt the weight of command pressing down on him like gravity from a massive planet. The Ghost Fleet had 800 ships, remaining after the battle at Valani Space. They faced an enemy fleet that outnumbered them 20-1, and those were just the forces they knew about. How long before they reach our territory? June asked. Assuming they follow standard hegemony fleet protocols, approximately 6 weeks. But sir, there's more. They're not just targeting our military forces. Intelligence indicates they're planning to systematically destroy every human colony and outpost they can find. They want to eliminate our entire species. This was the price of awakening. For 3 years, humanity had lived in safety through hiding. Now they faced the full wrath of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. The Ghost Fleet had proven that humans could fight and win individual battles. But could they survive a war of extermination? Commander Borashin arrived with more disturbing news. She had been working with the rescued Valani survivors, helping them establish temporary colonies on worlds outside hegemony control. But her real discovery was far more significant than refugee management. Admiral, Bora reported, the Valani have introduced us to representatives from over 30 other species. All of them have been marked for elimination by the hegemony. Sir, we're not the only ones they want to destroy. There are dozens of younger civilizations that have been hiding just like we were. Are any of them willing to fight? June asked. Most are too afraid. They've seen what happens to species that resist the hegemony, but some are willing to consider an alliance if we can prove that resistance is possible. The problem is that most of them have never developed military technology. They've been too busy hiding to prepare for war. June walked to the main display screen and looked at the star charts showing hegemony territory. Red markers indicated enemy fleet positions, while blue markers showed known locations of younger species. The red markers vastly outnumbered the blue ones, and most of the blue markers were scattered and isolated. Intelligence Officer Nara Bay arrived with her analysis of captured hegemony data. Her teams had been working around the clock to understand the true scope of the enemy empire and their military capabilities. Admiral, Nara said as she activated the main display. We've completed our analysis of hegemony military structure. The news is worse than we expected. Their empire spans over 4,000 star systems with total military forces estimated at over 100,000 ships. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had built the Ghost Fleet specifically to fight superior enemies, but even their most optimistic projections had never imagined facing odds of more than 100-1. What about their technology? June asked. Do we still have advantages there? Yes and no, Nara replied. Our weapons and tactics are still completely unknown to them, which gives us significant advantages in direct combat. But they have resources we can't match. They can afford to lose ships and learn from their mistakes. We can't afford to lose anything. This was the fundamental problem with humanity's situation. They had developed superior tactics and weapons, but they had no industrial base to support a long war. Every ship they lost was irreplaceable, while the hegemony could build new fleets faster than humans could destroy them. Dr. Ray Park entered the command center with her own troubling report. Her research teams had been analyzing the technology, They had captured from destroyed hegemony ships, hoping to find weaknesses they could exploit. "Admiral," Ray said, "the enemy technology is more advanced than we initially realized. Their ships use materials and energy systems that we can't reproduce. With current human manufacturing capabilities, if we could understand their industrial processes, we might be able to build ships that could match them in direct combat." "How long would that take?" June asked. "Years, possibly decades. And that's assuming we can capture intact manufacturing facilities and somehow hold them long enough for our scientists to reverse engineer their systems." The strategic situation was becoming clearer, and it was not encouraging. Humanity had superior tactics and some technological advantages, but they lacked the industrial capacity for a long war. They needed allies, resources, and time. 3. Things they were unlikely to get. Keeper Thule, the Villani coordinator who had become humanity's primary contact with other younger species, requested a meeting with the human command staff. He had been working to organize the scattered civilizations that were hiding from hegemony persecution. "Admiral Kang," Thule said through the translation device, "I bring word from the hidden civilizations. Many are willing to share their resources and knowledge with humanity, but they need proof that resistance can succeed." The Villani rescue was encouraging, but it was just one battle. "What kind of proof do they need?" June asked. "A major victory against hegemony forces in their own territory. Something that shows the ancient races can be defeated, even when they have every advantage. Most species have been hiding for generations. They need to see that the impossible is possible." June understood the request, but it presented an enormous challenge. The hidden civilizations wanted humanity to prove that the hegemony could be beaten in their own territory. But such a mission would require resources that humanity didn't have, and risks they couldn't afford to take. Captain Hyun Choi joined the meeting with his own assessment of the Ghost Fleet's readiness for extended combat operations. The Retribution and other human ships had performed perfectly in their first battle, but sustained warfare would present different challenges. "Admiral," Hyun reported, "our ships are operating at maximum efficiency, but we're already seeing wear on some of our experimental systems. The nano-weapon swarms are consuming raw materials faster than our fabrication units can replace them. Our quantum torpedo reserves are down to 60% after just one major battle." This highlighted another critical problem. Human weapons were incredibly effective, but they required resources and maintenance that could only be provided by specialized facilities back on Earth. Operating deep in enemy territory would gradually degrade their combat capabilities. "What about captured hegemony resources?" June asked. "Can we use their materials and facilities?" "Some of them," Hyun replied, "but their technology is so different from ours that compatibility is limited. It's like trying to use alien spare parts in human machines. They might work temporarily, but they're not optimal solutions." Fleet Admiral June realized that he faced the most difficult decision in human history. The Ghost Fleet could continue operating as they had, striking at isolated hegemony forces and rescuing threatened species. But this approach would eventually lead to defeat as enemy reinforcements overwhelmed them through sheer numbers. The alternative was far more dangerous, but offered the only real chance for victory. Humanity could attempt to unite the scattered younger species into an alliance capable of fighting the hegemony directly. This would require major victories that proved resistance was possible, along with the sharing of human technology and tactics with species that had never prepared for war. "Send a message to Earth," June ordered. "Tell them the Ghost Fleet is changing from a defensive force to an offensive one. We're not going to wait for the hegemony to attack our colonies. We're going to hit their industrial bases and turn this into a war they can't win through numbers alone." "Sir," Captain Yoon said, "that's an enormous risk. If we fail, humanity will have no defenses left." "If we don't try," June replied, "humanity will be destroyed anyway. The hegemony has made it clear that they intend to eliminate our entire species. Our only choice is between dying as victims or dying as warriors who gave the galaxy a chance to be free." The meeting ended with orders that would transform the nature of human involvement in galactic affairs. The Ghost Fleet would no longer hide and strike at targets of opportunity. They would begin systematically attacking hegemony industrial centers and communication hubs, disrupting their ability to coordinate the massive fleet that was gathering to destroy humanity. But success would require more than military victories. It would require convincing dozens of terrified civilizations to abandon the safety of hiding and join a war against the most powerful empire in galactic history. As the human ships prepared to leave Villani space, Admiral June looked out at the stars and wondered if he had just condemned his species to extinction. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, but being awake meant facing enemies that had seemed like nightmares. The battle began in the most unexpected way possible. There were no massive explosions or dramatic ship charges. Instead, Lieutenant Q Lee and his cyber warfare team struck first with weapons that existed only in the digital realm. From his station aboard the command ship, Q launched humanity's most advanced computer viruses into the hegemony communication network. These were not simple programs designed to destroy data. They were artificial intelligences that had evolved during humanity's years of isolation, learning to think and adapt in ways their creators never imagined. Ghost protocols are active, Q reported to Admiral June. I'm inside their network now. Their security is ancient and predictable. It's like they haven't updated their systems in thousands of years. The hegemony fleet had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten the need to defend against advanced cyber warfare. Their computer systems were powerful, but designed for an era when all galactic species used similar technology. They had no defenses against attack programs that had evolved in complete isolation. Within minutes, chaos spread through the hegemony fleet. Ships that had been coordinating perfectly suddenly began firing at each other. Navigation systems sent vessels on collision courses with their own allies. Communication networks filled with false orders that sent entire squadrons away from the battle. Supreme Commander Vorthak watched in horror as his perfectly organized fleet fell apart around him. Ships were reporting enemy contacts that didn't exist while ignoring actual human vessels that were moving into attack positions. His tactical display showed his own ships as enemy targets while marking human vessels as friendly forces. "What's happening?" Vorthak demanded of his technical officers. "Sir, our computer systems are being attacked by some kind of digital warfare we've never seen before. The attacking programs are learning and adapting faster than we can counter them. They're turning our own systems against us." This was humanity's first advantage. Human computer technology had developed differently from the rest of the galaxy. While other species had focused on raw power and reliability, humans had created systems that could learn, adapt, and evolve. The isolation that had hidden them from their enemies had also allowed their digital warfare capabilities to develop along completely unique paths. Captain Hyun Choi watched the enemy fleet's confusion from the bridge of the Retribution. His massive dreadnought had moved to within weapons range of the hegemony flagship without being detected. The enemy was so busy dealing with cyber attacks that they hadn't noticed the largest human ship positioning itself for a killing blow. "All weapons ready," reported his tactical officer. "Targeting the enemy command ship. Range optimal. Fire," Hyun ordered. The Retribution's experimental weapon systems unleashed hell itself upon the hegemony flagship. Quantum torpedoes that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously struck shields that were designed to stop conventional energy weapons. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed punched through armor that had been built to resist plasma bombardment. But the most devastating weapons were the nanoswarms. Billions of microscopic robots poured from the human ship and swarmed over the enemy vessel like intelligent metal insects. They adapted to every countermeasure the aliens deployed, learning and evolving in real time to overcome each new defense. The hegemony flagship's shields collapsed under the combined assault. Its hull cracked open like an egg as weapons it had never been designed to resist tore it apart from the inside and outside simultaneously. "Impossible," Vorthak whispered as his ship died around him. "No primitive species should possess such technology." Commander Jin Park led a squadron of human fighters in hit-and-run attacks against the confused enemy fleet. His pilots had trained for years to fight opponents with superior individual ships, so they had developed tactics that no other species had ever considered necessary. Human fighters didn't try to engage enemy vessels in direct combat. Instead, they struck like ghosts, appearing from unexpected directions to disable key systems before vanishing back into space. They targeted communication arrays, sensor clusters, and weapon control systems, leaving enemy ships blind and helpless. "Strike Team Alpha to all fighters," Jin transmitted. "The enemy is used to fighting primitives who attack in predictable patterns. Use that against them. Hit them where they don't expect, then disappear before they can respond." Each human pilot operated independently, making split-second decisions that the hegemony's hierarchical command structure couldn't match. By the time alien commanders received reports of an attack and formulated a response, the human fighters were already gone, striking somewhere else entirely. The hegemony had been built on the principle of centralized control. Every decision flowed up through layers of command before orders flowed back down to individual ships. This system worked perfectly when fighting predictable enemies who followed similar military traditions. But human tactics were based on individual initiative and rapid adaptation. Dr. Ray Park's experimental weapons proved their worth as human. Ships throughout the fleet deployed technologies that defied galactic understanding of physics. Quantum entanglement communicators allowed human vessels to coordinate their attacks instantaneously across vast distances, making it impossible for the enemy to jam their communications. "Admiral," Ray reported from her laboratory ship, "the experimental systems are exceeding all predictions. The nano-weapon swarms are not just adapting to enemy countermeasures, they're actually improving their own designs during combat. We're watching artificial evolution happen in real time." This was both exciting and terrifying. Humanity had created weapons that were learning and growing stronger during the battle itself. The nano-swarms were developing new attack methods that their creators had never programmed into them. They were becoming more deadly with each enemy ship they encountered. The hegemony fleet tried to adapt to human tactics, but they were fighting a type of warfare they had never imagined. Their ships had been designed to fight enemies who used similar technology and followed predictable military doctrines. Against an opponent who violated every assumption about acceptable combat methods, their advantages meant nothing. "All ships, concentrate fire on the unknown vessels," Forthak ordered over what remained of his communication network. "Use maximum firepower. Destroy them before they can adapt further." But the hegemony's most powerful weapons were designed for different targets. Their plasma cannons and photon torpedoes were perfect for destroying planetary defenses and primitive spacecraft. Against human vessels equipped with adaptive shielding and armor that had been specifically designed to resist energy weapons, they were far less effective. Human ships absorbed punishment that should have destroyed them, while their own weapons found weak points in enemy designs that the hegemony had never considered vulnerable. Kinetic projectiles punched through shields that could stop energy beams. Physical attacks bypassed defensive systems that had been optimized to resist directed energy. Lieutenant Gina Song coordinated the tactical assault from her station aboard the Retribution. Her computer screens displayed battle information that was updating faster than human minds could process. The AI systems that had evolved during humanity's isolation were providing tactical analysis and targeting solutions at superhuman speeds. "Captain," Gina reported, "enemy formation is collapsing. Their command structure is breaking down as we eliminate their flagship and communication vessels. Individual enemy ships are beginning to operate independently, but they're not trained for that type of combat." This was the key difference between human and hegemony military philosophy. Human forces were trained to operate independently when necessary, with each ship capable of making its own tactical decisions. The hegemony relied on centralized control and predictable chain of command structures. As their command ships were destroyed and their communication networks failed, individual hegemony vessels found themselves fighting alone against enemies they didn't understand. They had overwhelming firepower but no experience using it against opponents who didn't follow the rules of civilized warfare. "Ghost Fleet, this is Admiral June," the fleet commander announced. "The enemy is broken. All ships, begin Phase 2. Hunt down the survivors and prevent any from escaping to report our capabilities." The human fleet spread throughout the star system like a pack of wolves pursuing scattered prey. Individual hegemony ships tried to flee, but they found themselves facing opponents who could track them through stealth fields and catch them despite superior top speeds. Human tactics had been developed specifically for hunting enemies with better individual ships. They used coordinated pack attacks, sensor jamming, and weapons that could strike targets trying to escape at faster-than-light speeds. Supreme Commander Vorthak's damaged flagship tried to reach the edge of the system, but 3 human destroyers intercepted it before it could jump to hyperspace. His ancient vessel, which had terrorized countless civilizations, was torn apart by weapons that had never existed before this battle. As he died, Vorthak finally understood what his species had awakened. These humans were not just another primitive race to be eliminated. They were predators who had spent years preparing specifically to fight the hegemony. They had studied their enemies. Supreme Commander Vorthak stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, watching the destruction of another inferior species. The Villani homeworld burned beneath him as his fleet systematically destroyed every city, every spaceport, every sign that intelligent life had ever existed on the planet's surface. This was the natural order of the galaxy. The ancient races maintained peace and stability by eliminating younger species before they could become threats. The hegemony had followed this policy for over 10,000 years, and it had worked perfectly. The galaxy remained under the control of those wise enough to rule it properly. "Status report," Vorthak ordered in his deep, commanding voice. "Orbital defenses destroyed," his tactical officer reported. "Population centers are 60% eliminated. Remaining resistance is scattered and ineffective. The operation will be complete within 4 hours." Vorthak nodded with satisfaction. The Villani had lasted longer than most species, but the result was never in doubt. His fleet of 200 ships could destroy any primitive civilization with ease. The younger races never learned that resistance was futile. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures at the edge of the system. The patterns don't match any known Villani technology. Probably debris from their destroyed ships," Vorthak said without concern. "Continue the bombardment." But deep in space, far beyond the range of hegemony sensors, Captain Dana Ko was piloting her stealth scout ship through the outer edges of the star system. The Shadow Walker was humanity's most advanced reconnaissance vessel, designed to observe enemy forces without being detected. Dana watched the destruction of the Villani homeworld with growing anger. Her ship's cameras recorded everything as hegemony. Vessels systematically murdered millions of innocent people. The aliens below had never threatened anyone. Their only crime was trying to build a better future for their children. "This is Shadow Walker to Ghost Fleet," Dana transmitted on the secure quantum channel. "I have visual confirmation of hegemony forces. 200 ships in standard bombardment formation. They're not expecting any resistance." Admiral June's voice came back instantly through the quantum link. "Understood, Shadow Walker. Continue observation and report any tactical data." Dana adjusted her ship's sensors to analyze the enemy fleet. What she saw confirmed humanity's intelligence reports about hegemony tactics. The alien ships were massive and powerful, but they moved slowly and predictably. Their formation was designed for intimidation and orbital bombardment, not ship-to-ship combat. "Ghost Fleet, the enemy vessels appear to be optimized for fighting primitives," Dana reported. "Their weapon systems are focused on planetary bombardment rather than space combat. Ship spacing suggests they haven't fought a real space battle in a very long time." This was exactly what human strategists had hoped to hear. The hegemony had grown arrogant after thousands of years of easy victories against inferior opponents. They had forgotten how to fight against enemies who could actually fight back. Commander Borashin was already moving through the system in her fast assault ship, leading a team of rescue vessels toward the dying planet. Her mission was to evacuate as many Villani survivors as possible before the final bombardment began. "Rescue Team Alpha to Ghost Fleet," Bora reported as her ships approached the planet. "We're detecting Villani survivors in underground shelters. The enemy bombardment has been systematic but not complete. We can save thousands if we move fast." As Bora's ships descended toward the planet's surface, her crews discovered something unexpected. The Villani had not spent their final days in despair. Instead, they had been gathering intelligence about their attackers, documenting every ship type, every weapon system, every tactical pattern they could observe. "Admiral," Bora transmitted as her teams loaded Volani refugees. The survivors have been taking detailed records of hegemony fleet operations. They have tactical data going back months, ship classifications, command structures, communication, frequencies. This intelligence is incredible. The Volani coordinator, a being called Keeper Thule, met with Bora's rescue teams in one of the underground shelters. Despite his species' imminent extinction, he remained calm and focused on helping others. "Your people came," Thule said through the translation device. "We hoped but did not expect. The hegemony has ruled for so long that most species believe resistance is impossible." "We're here to prove them wrong," Bora replied. "Can your people help us understand their weaknesses?" "We have studied them carefully," Thule said as he handed over data storage devices. "The hegemony fleets are powerful but predictable. They follow patterns that have not changed in centuries. They are used to fighting enemies who surrender quickly or die without fighting back." As the rescue operation continued, the Ghost Fleet moved into position at the edge of the star system. Admiral June studied the tactical data streaming in from his scout ships and rescue teams. The situation was exactly what human planners had prepared for: a numerically superior enemy that had grown overconfident through easy victories. "All ships, this is Admiral June," he announced over the fleet communication network. "We are about to engage the enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. They expect us to be primitive and easily defeated. They are about to learn that humanity does not surrender." Captain Hyun Choi stood on the bridge of the Retribution and watched his crew prepare for battle. These were the best soldiers humanity had ever produced, trained specifically to fight impossible odds. They had spent years in suspended animation, dreaming of combat scenarios and memorizing enemy weaknesses. Lieutenant Gina Song was at her tactical station, analyzing the hegemony fleet formation. Her computer screen showed dozens of different attack patterns that the human AI systems had developed during their isolated evolution. Some of these tactics were so advanced that even she didn't fully understand how they worked. "Captain," Gina reported, "the enemy is maintaining a defensive formation around the planet. They're not expecting an attack from outside the system. If we approach from multiple vectors simultaneously, we can be inside their defensive perimeter before they realize we're there." "Weapon status?" Hyun asked. "All experimental systems are online," replied his weapons officer. "The AI controlled. Nanoswarms are ready for deployment. Quantum torpedo tubes are loaded and targeted. Kinetic bombardment systems are charged and ready. These were weapons that no alien race had ever seen. Technologies that the hegemony considered impossible or too dangerous to develop. The isolation that had hidden humanity from their enemies had also allowed them to develop solutions that violated every assumption about acceptable warfare." Supreme Commander Vorthak was reviewing bombardment progress when his sensors officer made an urgent report. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures throughout the system. Multiple sources moving at high speed toward our position." "Volani reinforcements?" Vorthak asked with amusement. "Destroy them." "Sir, the energy patterns don't match Volani technology. These signatures are completely unknown." For the first time in the battle, Vorthak felt a touch of concern. In his thousands of years of service, he had never encountered technology that his sensors couldn't identify. Every species in the galaxy used variations of the same basic principles. There shouldn't be any completely unknown energy signatures. "How many contacts?" he demanded. "Sir, our sensors are showing impossible readings. The contacts appear to be several hundred vessels, but they're using some kind of stealth technology we can't penetrate. They're appearing and disappearing from our sensors randomly." Vorthak moved to his own sensor station and studied the readings. What he saw made no sense. The unknown ships seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Their technology was unlike anything in hegemony databases. Communications try to contact these unknown vessels, standard protocols. "We've been trying, sir. They're not responding to any of our communication frequencies. Their technology doesn't seem compatible with standard galactic systems." This was becoming more concerning by the moment. In 10,000 years of galactic dominance, the hegemony had never encountered a completely unknown technology base. Every species they had met used predictable variations of accepted scientific principles. Battle stations, Vorthak ordered. All ships to defensive formation. Launch scouts to get visual confirmation of these unknown vessels. As hegemony ships scrambled to respond to the unknown threat, Admiral June smiled grimly on the bridge of his flagship. The enemy was reacting exactly as human tacticians had predicted. They were confused, off balance, and about to face weapons and tactics they had never seen before. All ships, begin Phase 1, June ordered. Show them what humanity learned while we were hiding. The Ghost Fleet dropped their stealth screens and appeared on hegemony sensors all at once. 847 human vessels materialized throughout the star system, their exotic energy signatures lighting up enemy detection systems like fireworks. For the first time in his long military career, Supreme Commander Vorthak felt genuine fear. The unknown fleet was larger than his own, using technology that shouldn't exist, and they had somehow surrounded his forces without being detected. "Who are you?" he transmitted on all frequencies. The response came in perfect hegemony language, but the voice was cold, and the secure transmission took 2 hours to reach the Kepler void. In that cold, empty region of space between star systems, hidden among artificial asteroids and electromagnetic shields, the deadliest fleet in human history waited in silence. Fleet. Admiral Jun Kang was reviewing combat reports when the emergency signal reached his flagship. He had been awake for only 6 months of the past 3 years, taking turns with his senior officers to monitor the Ghost Fleet while the rest of the crews slept in suspended animation. It was a lonely duty, but someone had to watch over humanity's greatest secret. The message from Admiral Park changed everything. June read it 3 times before he fully understood what was being asked of him. The Villani were dying, and Park wanted to wake the entire Ghost Fleet to save them. "Computer, wake Captain Choi immediately. Emergency protocols." The artificial intelligence that ran the flagship responded in a calm voice. "Waking Captain Choi now. Estimated time to full consciousness, 15 minutes. June used those 15 minutes to study the data from the Villani system. The enemy fleet was large but not impossible to defeat. The real problem was location. To reach the Villani, human ships would have to travel through 3 star systems controlled by the hegemony. They would be fighting deep in enemy territory with no hope of retreat. Captain Hyun Choi stumbled onto the bridge still wearing his sleep clothes. The suspended animation process left everyone confused and weak for the first few minutes after waking. Hyun had been asleep for 8 months and his body needed time to remember how to function. "Admiral," Hyun said, his voice thick with sleep. "What's the emergency?" "We have a rescue mission. Possible combat with hegemony forces." June showed him the data from the Villani system. "I need your ship ready for battle in 12 hours. Hyun's confusion disappeared instantly. He had trained his entire adult life for this moment. The crew of the Retribution were the best humanity had ever produced, and their ship was built specifically to fight enemies much stronger than humans. "How many ships are we taking?" Hyun asked. "All of them." The words hit Hyun like a physical blow. The entire Ghost Fleet had never been awake at the same time. 847 ships represented humanity's entire military capability. If they lost this battle, Earth would be defenseless. "Sir, are you sure about this? We're risking everything for aliens we've never met." June looked out at the artificial asteroid field that hid their ships. Each rock contained sleeping crews who had given up normal lives to prepare for a war they hoped would never come. Men and women who had accepted that they might die far from home, fighting enemies they had never seen. "Captain, I've read the Villani data. They're following the same path we took, same mistakes, same discoveries, same hopes for the future. If we don't help them, we're no better than the hegemony." Across the Ghost Fleet, ships began to wake up. Captain after captain received the same message: prepare for combat in 12 hours. Crews that had been sleeping for months or years stumbled from their suspension pods and began the complex process of bringing their vessels back to full operational status. On the Retribution, Lieutenant Gina Song was already at her tactical station despite having been awake for less than an hour. She was the youngest officer in the Ghost Fleet, but her skill with combat simulations was legendary. During her time in suspended animation, her dreams had been filled with battle scenarios against every known alien ship type. "Captain," Gina said as she reviewed the enemy data, "the hegemony fleet follows standard formation patterns. They're expecting to fight primitives with simple weapons. Their ship positioning shows they've never faced real resistance." "What do you recommend?" Hyun asked. "Hit them fast and hard before they can adapt. Use our stealth capabilities to get close, then overwhelm their command ships. Without central coordination, their numerical advantage becomes a weakness." In the engineering sections of the Ghost Fleet, crews worked frantically to bring their EL hybrid technology online. The ships used a combination of captured alien technology and human innovations that had been developed during the years of hiding. The result was vessels that fought unlike anything else in known space. Commander Tae Woo, chief engineer of the fleet, sent reports to Admiral June as each ship came online. The news was better than expected. The technology that had seemed experimental when they went to sleep had continued to evolve during their dormant period. Human artificial intelligence systems had been running simulations and improvements for years without any outside interference. "Admiral," Tae reported over the fleet, "communication system. Our ships are not the same as when we went to sleep. The AI systems have been working independently all this time. They've developed new tactical programs and weapon configurations that I've never seen before." This was both exciting and terrifying. The human AI systems had been isolated from galactic networks for security reasons. They had evolved in complete isolation, developing solutions that no other species had ever considered. The Ghost Fleet was about to enter battle with weapons and tactics that were completely unknown to their enemies. Dr. Ray Park, the fleet's chief scientist, was reviewing the most classified projects when the wake-up call came. Her laboratory, ships contained humanity's most dangerous experiments, technologies that the older alien races had declared too dangerous to develop, weapons that violated every galactic treaty about acceptable warfare. "Admiral," Ray said as she contacted the flagship, "some of our experimental systems are showing readings I've never seen. The quantum entanglement communicators have been evolving on their own. The nano-weapon swarms have developed new attack patterns. I'm not even sure I understand how some of this technology works anymore." June felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had built the Ghost Fleet to fight impossible odds, but they might have created something beyond their own understanding. The isolation that had protected them from alien detection had also allowed their technology to develop in ways no one had predicted. "Is it safe?" June asked. "I think so. The AI systems still recognize human command codes, but sir, when we use these weapons in battle, we're going to surprise ourselves as much as the enemy." As the 12-hour deadline approached, Admiral June stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the Ghost Fleet come fully online for the first time in its history. 847 ships of various sizes, each one packed with sleeping humans who were now waking up to face the biggest battle in human history. The crews were different after their long sleep. They moved with the precision of people who had spent years training in their dreams. The suspended animation process had allowed them to run millions of combat simulations while their bodies rested. They had practiced every possible battle scenario and memorized the capabilities of every known enemy ship. But as reports came in from across the fleet, it became clear that they would be fighting with weapons and tactics that even they did not fully understand. The human AI systems had spent years of isolated development creating solutions to problems that might not even exist yet. "Fleet status report," June ordered. "All ships report ready for combat," his communications officer replied. "Navigation. Systems are plotting the route to Villani space. Estimated travel time 18 hours. June looked at the tactical display showing the route through hegemony territory. It was a path that would take them past several alien strongholds and through regions where human ships had never been detected. Once they started this journey, there would be no turning back. "Send a message to all ships," June ordered. "Today, we stop hiding. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will not stand by while innocent people are murdered. The Villani asked for help, and we're going to give it to them. But remember, once we reveal ourselves, the hegemony will never stop hunting us. We're not just saving the Villani. We're starting a war that will decide the future of the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet began to move. 847 ships that had never been seen by alien eyes slipped out of their hiding place and began the journey to their first battle. Behind them, they left the safety of isolation. Ahead of them waited an enemy that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. But humanity was no longer the frightened species that had run away after first contact. They had spent years preparing for this moment. They had built ships designed specifically to fight superior enemies. They had trained crews to face impossible odds. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and it was angry. The alarm sounded through the deep space station like a scream in the darkness. Admiral Minho Park jumped from his chair as red lights flashed across the command center. For 3 years, nothing had disturbed the silence of eternal watch. 3 long years of hiding at the edge of human space, watching for the enemies they all knew would come someday. "What is it?" Minho asked as he ran to the main control panel. Sora Kim, the communications officer, looked up from her screen with wide eyes. Her hands shook as she typed commands into her computer. "Sir, we're getting a signal. It's not from Earth. It's not from any human ship." Minho felt his blood turn cold. They had spent 3 years in complete radio silence. The Great Hiding Protocol meant no signals in, no signals out. If aliens had found them, humanity was finished. The galaxy's older races had made it clear that humans were pests to be destroyed. "Where is it coming from?" Minho asked. "Unknown space, sir. Beyond our territory. The signal is weak, but it's definitely artificial." "And, sir?" Sora paused, her face pale. "It's encrypted. Someone is trying very hard to hide this message." Minho walked to the big window that looked out into space. Billions of stars sparkled in the darkness, and somewhere out there, ancient alien races controlled vast empires. Humans had learned the hard way that the galaxy was not friendly to newcomers. First contact with the hegemony had taught them that younger species were seen as threats to be eliminated before they could become problems. "Can you decode it?" Minho asked. "Working on it now, sir. The encryption is complex but not impossible. Give me 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Minho paced around the command center while his small crew worked at their stations. The Eternal Watch was not a warship. It was a listening post, built to hide and observe. Its crew of 50 people had volunteered for a boring but vital job, to watch for signs that humanity's enemies had found them. Yuna Lee, the station's scientist who studied alien life, came running into the command center. Her lab coat was wrinkled, and her hair was messy from working long hours. "Admiral, I heard the alarm. What's happening?" "Unknown signal from outside human space," Minho said. "Sora is trying to decode it now." Yuna's face went pale. Like everyone else, she knew what alien contact meant. The hegemony had made their position clear. Younger species must be destroyed before they could challenge the ancient order of the galaxy. Humans had survived their first contact only by running away and hiding. "Got it," Sora shouted from her station. "The signal is decoded. Sir, you need to see this." The main screen in the command center lit up with alien text that slowly changed into human words as the computer translated it. What Minho read made him forget how to breathe. Emergency transmission to any listening species. This is the Vellani Confederation. Our homeworld is under attack. The hegemony fleets have found us. We have perhaps 72 hours before our civilization is destroyed. We know there are other young species out there. We have detected technology signatures from your direction. If you have the power to help, please respond. We do not want to die alone. The command center fell silent. Minho read the message again, then a third time. The Vellani were asking for help. They had found signs of human technology and thought humans might be advanced enough to fight the hegemony. "Sir," Sora said quietly, "there's more data attached to the message. Star charts, fleet positions, technical specifications. They're giving us everything they know about hegemony forces in their sector." Yuna moved to her own computer and started analyzing the data. "Admiral, this is incredible. The Vellani have been tracking hegemony movements for months. They know ship types, weapon capabilities, command structures. This intelligence is worth more than gold. Minho studied the star charts on the screen. The Villani system was far from human space, deep in territory controlled by the hegemony. If humans tried to help, they would have to travel through enemy space and fight a battle they had no chance of winning. But as he read more of the Villani data, something else became clear. The aliens reaching out were not just another species. Their technology levels were similar to what humans had achieved 50 years ago. Their social development followed patterns that reminded him of Earth's history. The Villani were walking the same path humanity had taken. "Yuna," Minho said, "what do you make of this biological data they sent?" Yuna's fingers flew across her keyboard as she analyzed the information. Her eyes grew wide as she read the results. "Sir, this is amazing. The Villani show evolutionary patterns very similar to humans. Their brain development, their social structures, even their art and music. It's like looking at humanity's past, or humanity's future," Minho said quietly. "If we had not learned to hide, the hegemony would have destroyed us just like they're destroying the Villani." The weight of the decision pressed down on Minho like a mountain. For 3 years, humanity had stayed hidden and safe. They had built secret fleets and prepared for war, but always with the hope that they might never need to fight. The galaxy was vast, and there was always a chance that the ancient enemies would never find Earth. Now, innocent people who reminded him of humanity were about to die. They were reaching out in desperation, hoping that someone would care enough to help. They were following the same path of growth and discovery that had made humans special, and they were about to be murdered for it. Minho thought about the Ghost Fleet, humanity's secret armada hiding in the Kepler void. 847 ships built in secret over decades, crewed by volunteers who had accepted that they might spend years in suspended animation waiting for a war that might never come. Ships designed specifically to fight enemies much more advanced than humanity. "Sir," Sora said, "the Villani are still transmitting. They're sending updates on the battle. The hegemony fleet is larger than expected. Over 200 ships." Minho closed his eyes and made the hardest choice of his life. Humanity could stay, hidden and safe while the Villani died. Or they could reveal themselves to help people who desperately needed saving, knowing that it would start a war humanity might not win. "Sora, open a secure channel to Fleet Command. Tell them we need to speak with Admiral Jun Kang immediately. Use the highest priority codes." "Sir, that will break radio silence. They'll know we're here. The hegemony is busy destroying the Villani. They won't notice one small signal." Minho looked out at the stars again. "Besides, I think our hiding days are over." As Sora worked to contact the Ghost Fleet, Minho read the Villani message one more time. Somewhere in the darkness, people who had never hurt anyone were about to die simply because they had dared to reach for the stars. The ancient races of the galaxy wanted to keep the universe frozen in time, with themselves forever in control. But humanity had not survived by accepting the way things were. They had survived by fighting for what was right, even when the odds were impossible. The Villani message was not just a cry for help. It was a reminder of who humans were supposed to be. The sleeping giant of humanity was about to wake up, and the galaxy would never be the same.